And I want you all to know that we are fighting the fake news. It's fake, phony, fake. A few days ago, I called the fake news the enemy of the people, and they are. They are the enemy of the people.
Many on the left that the speech they disagree with on the internet, which they're calling now fake news, ought to be actively suppressed by the authorities.
Bipartisan legislation is making its way through Congress to boost the government's response to fake news.
Google announcing overnight it will prevent websites that push phony news from using its AdSense advertising network, and Facebook announcing that it is updating policies to ban fake news. Those are important steps, Robin.
Very important.
President Obama was able to make the deadline and recently signed the act into law. Also hidden deep in the NDAA Act is the Countering Foreign Propaganda and Disinformation Act, first introduced by Ohio Senator Rob Portman. Now, critics argue the act allows the U.S. government to censor some news as propaganda and push a government agenda, in other words, government propaganda, on the U.S. citizens, usually by way of labeling inconvenient stories as fake news.
If Adolf Hitler were in power today and a law was made to ban fake news, do you believe that Hitler would have used that power to shut down websites that were dissenting from his beliefs? Lately, many politicians such as Obama, Hillary, the European Union, and others have been calling for a ban on what they deem to be fake news. Here in America, a very subtle war has been declared against the First Amendment, which reads as follows: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Numerous websites and web pages are being created containing fabricated or fake news stories, and now the attack on the freedom of speech and of the press is taking place. What is the grand idea? What is the agenda? Total control of the media by a corporate elite. Propaganda, Nazi Germany-style control to influence mass opinion, a silence of the competition. Many on the left that the speech they disagree with on the internet, which they're calling now fake news, ought to be actively suppressed by the authorities.
Bipartisan legislation is making its way through Congress to boost the government's response to fake news.
Is it possible that the news agencies might be receiving information from the same sources? Just take a look at the following and notice that whether it is Fox or CBS, they are all reading from the same script.
Who are you really shopping for this holiday season? It's okay, you can admit it if you've bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
Well, it's okay, you can admit it if you have bought an item or 2 or maybe 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it. You've bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you've bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it, Todd. If you bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it. If you bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it. If you bought an item or 2 or maybe 10 for yourself.
It's okay, you can admit it if you bought an item or 2 or 10 for yourself.
Mike Myers says, yeah, baby.
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 Fake news has been produced by the mainstream media for several years now. In 1991, the justification for the Gulf War in Iraq was based on fake news. The daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to Washington made up a story about babies in incubators being taken and left for dead by Iraqi soldiers. The entire story was admitted by this girl to be a complete fabrication after the war was already started.
While I was there, I saw the Iraqi soldiers come into the hospital with guns. They took the babies out of the incubators. Took the incubators and left the children to die on the cold floor. It was horrifying.
What the world was never told was that the incident had in fact been the work of a public relations firm, Hill & Knowlton, and the girl had actually been the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador.
Nurse Naira became the mainstream's darling, but once the vote had safely passed, she admitted inventing the whole thing and was actually the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador to Washington, lying to get the public to back war.
Hundreds of thousands of innocent lives were killed based on fake news done by CNN and other major networks. And what's more is that the fake news continued with CNN reporters reportedly in Saudi Arabia dodging missiles and gas attacks, but in actuality they were filming in Atlanta, Georgia.
Is that a missile going out? No. We're not quite sure. We can't show you anything else than what we're seeing right now because of military regulations. We are not allowed to show you where the missiles might be going, what direction they might be flying in, where the airbursts might be taking place.
CD, if you need to take cover, I notice that you've got your gas mask in your hands. If you need to put it on, please do so. If you need to take cover, please do so.
People are looking up in the sky, scanning the skies to see what they can see. Do we see much of anything out there? Can we see much of anything? The top 10 things about Saudi Arabia. Maybe we can shorten the list to 5.
Oh God, Geopolitics by Dan Quayle.
Je suis un journaliste américain.
And no major networks reported on this fake news, and there has never been any mainstream news piece done to discredit this fake news by other major networks. Google, Facebook, and YouTube are being petitioned to make war on these fake news sites as they become more prevalent. Yet news networks like CNN are regarded by many as being reliable sources of information.
What news outlet do you watch?
I try to watch all of them because I know a lot of them have their own opinions on certain things. I watch Fox, I watch CNN, I watch NBC, you know, CBS, things like that.
Fox News, local news, ABC, NBC.
They were caught producing fake news, and thousands of innocent lives were destroyed because of this fake news propaganda. And this didn't just happen in the 90s. CNN has been caught numerous times hiring actors to produce fake news concerning Sandy Hook, the Orlando shooting, as well as 9/11 and other stories. Even George W. Bush was asked about the White House putting out fake news, and he replied that it was not against the law and that it has been part of policy for many years.
Mr. President, earlier this year you told us you had ordered your administration to cease and desist on payments to journalists to promote your agenda. You cited the need for ethical concerns and the need for a bright line between the press and the government. Your administration continues to make the use of video news releases, which are prepackaged news stories sent to television stations, fully aware that some or many of these stations will air them without any disclaimer that they are produced by the government. Comptroller General of the United States this week said that raises ethical questions. Does it raise ethical questions about the use of government money to produce stories about the government that wind up being aired with no disclosure that they were produced by the government?
There is a Justice Department opinion that says these pieces are within the law so long as they're based upon facts, not advocacy. This has been a long-standing practice of the federal government to use these types of videos.
Is the media being used more for indoctrination rather than information? Is the news being manipulated to promote an agenda? Websites are being created that seem to be flooding the web with numerous fake news stories. Take, for instance, the following news story concerning the Pope being a recent victim of fake news. We are told by this Catholic website that Pope Francis has recently become a victim of a fake news story, and in the article it was said that the Pope was told by God to change the 10 Commandments. Though the story is fabricated and it is from a fake news website, we have to wonder who has created these sites that all seem to be coming out of nowhere. Snopes.com has come out and told us that the story concerning Pope Francis is fake news, and rightly so. However, there is more to this story, as I will get to. The editor of Snopes.com describes herself as an openly left-leaning liberal and is called Bill Clinton one of our greatest presidents. They have been caught omitting information when facts are contrary to their political leanings. And now Facebook and Snopes have decided to team up together to stop what they deem to be fake news by censoring websites that may produce fake news.
Today, we're testing some new features on Newsfeed. An item may be flagged in your newsfeed if it has been disputed by an independent third-party fact-checker outside of Facebook.
2016 delivered a massive kick in the teeth for the political establishment, and then as part of the blame game, Facebook came under increasing scrutiny for its role in the spread of alleged fake news. So this is what's led up to this development that we're seeing today. In a bid to be more trustworthy, Facebook says that it's now going to be checking the stories that you post on your newsfeed. How are they going to do it? Well, they're going to use third-party fact checkers, and that's where this story gets interesting because, well, allegedly social media users will be able to flag up any story that they see as dubious or perhaps containing facts that might not be true, and then it's up to these so-called coalition groups of fact checkers, third parties, which include groups like Snopes, PolitiFact, Associated Press and ABC News, to go through the story and check if it's true or not. They'll be able to mark a story as disputed, effectively put a black mark against it, so that will come up on your newsfeed if they think a story might not be true. Of course, the tricky thing here is the fact that some of these fact checkers have themselves been accused of impartiality. Take the Snopes website, for example. That was accused of a heavy pro-Clinton bias in the run-up to the US election. Well, for its part, Facebook says that it needs to tread a fine line between providing an open and a neutral space and being responsible. Take a listen to what Facebook has to say.
We really value giving people a voice, but we also believe we need to take responsibility for the spread of fake news on our platform.
Now, why is all of this important to understand? Well, as a Bible prophecy student in the book of Daniel, I understand that the man of sin mentioned in the book of Daniel 7 has to do with the papacy. And in verse 25, we are told that he thinks to change times and laws. Historic documentation from the Catholic Church themselves tells us that they have done this very thing. Quote, "We observe Sunday instead of Saturday because the Catholic Church in the Council of Laodicea transferred the solemnity from Saturday to Sunday." And that's from the Converts Catechism. They said also, Sunday is a Catholic institution and its claims to observance can be defended only on Catholic principles. From beginning to end of Scripture, there is not a single passage that warrants the transfer of weekly public worship from the last day of the week to the first. The Catholic Press, Sydney, Australia, August 1900. Another one, Protestants accept Sunday rather than Saturday as the day for public worship after the Catholic Church made the change. But the Protestant mind does not seem to realize that in observing Sunday, they are accepting the authority of the spokesman for the Church, the Pope, our Sunday visitor, February 5th, 1950. And there are many more admissions from the Catholic Church that they have changed God's 10 Commandments. When we compare the 10 Commandments in the Bible to the commandments in the Catholic Catechism, we can notice that the second commandment concerning graven images is removed, and if you've been to a Catholic church, you'll notice they don't keep that commandment. Furthermore, most of the words of the Sabbath are removed, concerning the Sabbath being the seventh day and not laboring on that day. And finally, the 10th commandment was divided into two in order to make up for removing the second commandment. So the papacy has changed God's commandments. Pope Francis didn't need a vision from God. It was told to us in the prophecy of Daniel before it happened, and unfortunately Snopes.com failed to take note of that. Pope Francis recently stated that by spreading and focusing on fake news and smearing politicians, you risk becoming people who have a morbid fascination with excrement. However, the problem is that according to the mainstream media, anyone with a differing opinion is said to be spreading fake news now. And many websites are being blacklisted by Google, while the corporate-sponsored media, who is known to spread fake news, is not being blacklisted. Those who understand this history regarding the papacy are today being considered extremists.
The Department of Defense has just issued a new list of extremists that should be watched. And on that, in fact, number one, past the Muslim Brotherhood and past Hamas, Hezbollah, number one, evangelical Christians. Among the groups Kaczynski had listed were those who believe America was founded on godly principles. That would be me. Christians who take the Bible literally. That would be me. And fundamentalists. I don't know what that means exactly, but I think that might be even me. Kaczynski did not explain what he meant by fundamentalist, But from the context, it was clear that he was referring again to those who took the Bible literally or, quote, too seriously.
The papacy has declared war on fundamentalism, which if looked up in the dictionary refers to Protestant or Bible-believing Christianity. So ultimately, those websites, YouTube channels, and Facebook pages who might be promoting truth, such as that the Pope has changed God's commandments, may soon be under censorship as the war on fake news continues. Furthermore, to make laws against fake news is a violation of the First Amendment rights of the people. It is a violation of your right to free speech and freedom of the press. But creating these fake news sites on purpose will create a problem and result in public outrage. Thus, the solution will be to give up some of your liberties, such as the First Amendment rights. JFK gave us many warnings years ago concerning the efforts being made by secret societies to silence the media.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. I am not asking your newspapers to support an administration, but I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people. For I have complete confidence in the response and dedication of our citizens whenever they are fully informed. Without debate, without criticism, no administration and no country can succeed, and no republic can survive. That is why the Athenian lawmaker Solon decreed it a crime for any citizen to shrink from controversy. And that is why our press was protected by the First Amendment, the only business in America specifically protected by the Constitution, not primarily to amuse and entertain, not to emphasize the trivial and the sentimental, not to simply give the public what it wants, but to inform, to arouse, to reflect, to state our dangers and our opportunities, to indicate our crises and our choices, to lead, mold, educate, and sometimes even anger public opinion. That government at all levels must meet its obligation to provide you with the fullest possible information outside the narrowest limits of national security. And so it is to the printing press, to the recorder of man's deeds, the keeper of his conscience, the courier of his news, that we look for strength and assistance, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
Many websites that are not shying away from reporting the news have been deemed fake news recently, and Google, Facebook, and YouTube have taken away their ad revenue, which basically would bankrupt most of these small news agencies, since some of them depend on revenue from YouTube ads, Google ads, and Facebook ads. The fight against fake news is actually a fight to censor dissenting voices and a fight against the First Amendment of the Constitution. However, we can notice that even the mainstream media is calling each other fake news both ways.
Everybody's talking about fake news. Have you been hearing about this lately, the fake news? You have to be careful, though. You really do. Before you share a story that you see online, make sure it's from a trustworthy source, like me.
So who decides what should be censored? Perhaps an informed public with understanding could make better decisions. Maybe this is why the First Amendment protects free speech and the media. Is it possible that the mainstream news networks are actually programming masses? Perhaps that is why it is called programming, or people have to watch the latest program. We are not run by YouTube ads and likely never will be, and therefore we need your support in order to continue this ministry to educate the public concerning the great controversy that is taking place between Christ and his angels and Satan and his fallen angels. Be sure to share, like, and subscribe, and also remember to check out some of our other very important videos. God bless.
In the old days, this doesn't happen because they used to treat them very, very rough. And when they protested once, you know, they would not do it again so easily.
The protest is over.